was my buddy.
Oh.
But she's working with the governor right now.
So
I don't think she'll be part of this. Okay. No, that is just fine. Oh, okay, yeah, I think we're ready. Thanks. All right. Well, welcome to the special meeting of the State Board of Higher Education. And I'm actually going to have a guest present to you today. Claudia Berg is going to introduce a little bit of information about the Heritage Center before we jump into business. So, Claudia?
Okay, I'll get down here. I just wanted to welcome everyone to the North Dakota Heritage Center. I'm currently the Expansion and New Initiatives Coordinator for the activity that's been going on at the Heritage Center for the last several years. And in about a week and a half, I'm going to take the reins as the new director of the agency. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you on potentially all sorts of projects in the near future and far future as well. I also just wanted to mention that all the universities and colleges played a role as we developed the exhibits for the Heritage Center, that many of you hosted our public meetings that we had across the state as we were garnering public input and partnership input into our exhibits. So I wanted to thank you for those relationships. And also mention that in our Inspiration Gallery, which is the one we opened last Sunday, there's different things in there that some of you might recognize, that we have a memorandum of agreement with Valley City State for the Ag Cab Lab, say that in the correct order, and it's been very popular and we really appreciate that relationship. We also have a spacesuit from UND, and you'll also see some other sports-related sorts of things in some of the exhibits as well. So over time, we can grow our exhibits, include more and more information. So we look forward to working with you on that front as well. And following your meeting today, we'll give you a tour of the facility. We can go behind the scenes if you have time, or stick to the public level and give you an overview of the building and the exhibits. So I look forward to seeing you a little bit later this afternoon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I think we will do the roll call, Christy.
Board Chair Diedrich,
Here?
Dr. Jelmstead,
Here.
Dr. Melliker,
Here.
Mr. Schaft,
Shaft is here.
Ms. Nesset, Mr. Morton,
Here.
Dr. Murphy, Mr. McEwen,
Here.
Ms. Reichert,
Here.
Ms. Hofferth.
Here.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Grant.
Yes, Grant?
Hey, the call-in information that came on our Outlook, like to our iPhones and that, is a little different than what was on the email. And I know I did use the call-in that came on my iPhone, and that was just dead airspace there. So I don't know if we're maybe missing anybody because they're trying to call in, but I just thought I'd let you know there's a discrepancy on the call-in numbers.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Christy?
I had to
All right.
expand the number of lines because so many people were calling in.
Okay.
But the newest one did go out.
Okay, thank you very much. And before we move on, Mr. Morton, where are you?
I'm in Barcelona, Spain.
I knew that. That's why I just had to. Yeah.
Can you stay there, Don?
Well, thank you for joining
Some
us
people
today.
would love that.
Yes.
That-
Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and I would like to remind board members that per NDCC Section 440426, topics which may be considered at a special meeting are limited to those set forth in the notice of the special meeting. So if you see me or hear me interrupt you, it's because we're getting off topic and we need to stay on topic today. So if I have a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Second. Okay. Christie?
Mr. Shaft?
Shaft votes yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Dr. Jonested?
Yes.
Ms. Reichert?
Yes.
Dr. Meliker?
Yes.
Board Chair Diedrich?
Yes. Okay. Item number 2 is approve the process for selecting the next chancellor. Dr. Scogan, would you like to make some comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We sent out a summary of proposed action, and I do want to say that this is basically built upon the way the last search was conducted for chancellor at large, for permanent chancellor, not the interim chancellor position that I currently sit in. And so what we did is structured this so that you would have the background information, and hopefully everybody had a chance to review that. And we can go through it step by step and do it however you want to do it, ma'am. It's a 2-page agenda this time.
Yes, yes, that is quite nice. Well, I'm going to take a moment here to give my input. I don't normally speak first, but this might open it up for some discussion. We have a proposed motion about the next steps for the chancellor search. And after some conversation with a consultant we're already working with, it's come to my attention that there are different ways of doing this. And just because we did it this way last time, it might not be the way we want to do it on this next chancellor search. So today could be an opportunity for us to just allow the chancellor to put out the RFP to find a consulting firm or a search firm, and then have that search firm work with us on the steps and the makeup of the committees and the process that we follow. So today we could actually just vote on A, C, and D, and then work with our consulting firm on Part B. So I'm opening this up for input from the board.
Madam Chair, this is Grant.
Yes, Grant?
I agree with what you're proposing, and as I think the board might be aware, I was one of the individuals who raised just the question as to whether we needed to have the same makeup as with the last search committee, and I am interested in knowing maybe what a consultant recommends as far as that makeup. I'm certainly in favor of going ahead and getting the RFP out there and getting that process moving. But I do think that we as a board need a little bit of input and some discussion as to the actual search committee makeup. And I think that's what you're saying, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
This is Don Morton. I agree with everything that Grant just said, and I like the idea of proceeding with an RFP and then letting our consultant give us further advice on the makeup of the search committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
And
Moore.
Madam Chair, this is Grant again, and this is just related to the RFP and the chancellor's process. And I think I had made the same comment when we were going through one of the recent presidential searches. But I would encourage the chancellor to take the opportunity to speak with those of us who have conducted searches recently and using these various search firms, just to can reconfirm what our experiences were in utilizing the different firms. And I think the chancellor did that last time, and I'm hoping it was helpful to him, and I'm just suggesting that he do that again.
Okay, thank you. He's nodding his head yes. Other board members?
This is Eric. I apologize for being late. Apparently there was 2 dial-in codes, and I was on dead air for a moment and finally decided to try another code. I would concur that I think it's really important that we look at past performance of not only search firms, but also of how things were done in the past and what has worked and what hasn't worked. And as search committees get larger and larger, they tend to be more and more problematic from a lot of views. And I think if we have a tighter search committee that once candidates are selected, of course, now you're going to bringing in the presidents and other, vice chancellors, so forth, into that interview process. And then the board can, of course, solicit their feedback and then take into consideration all that feedback when ultimately to the whole board, and then those discussions can ensue at the board level as well. But ultimately, I think this will provide not only, I don't want to say it necessarily streamlined, but I think a process by which you remove any potential conflicts of interest that may be perceived by some of the individuals involved in perhaps that interview process. And if they were on the search committee, may preclude them from being as active as or voice their concerns in a manner that would be most useful. So just my thoughts on it real briefly, following up on perhaps what was already been said.
Yep, thank you.
I have a question about the, throughout a lot of the policies, we use the term chancellor and commissioner interchangeable, and I wonder if we shouldn't just use the word chancellor in the RFP, because from people that we visited with and people, and just in talking to other people, it would seem to me we would get stronger candidates that way. So I would think instead of having the RFP go out with both of those terms in it, the RFP should actually go out with the word chancellor in it, so there's no confusion.
Ms. Reichert?
I have just a couple comments. First, I like the idea of being consistent, so I think that's a good one. Although I don't know in terms of which of those two terms we should use. I don't know if one has a little more, I don't know, there's connotations with one and not the other. So part of me might think, is commissioner more the word we want? And I think that leads into my other point, which is I think as we talk about, I think this is a really pivotal moment for our board in selecting our next chancellor and an opportunity for us as board members to decide. We just got done with our strategic planning, talking about where we want to go as a system. I think it's really important that we all agree on what we want, or the type of person, individual that we want to lead us in that plan. And so I think the way I understand the process as it's laid out, the committee would be appointed and then, kind of go forward. I guess I'd rather see us come together as a board and agree on what we're looking for first. I think just in defining, not only the types of skills and experiences that we're looking for, but talking about the culture that we want to set, the tone for execution of our strategy going forward. So I think I'd like all of us to be involved in that conversation to some extent. So I think I like the idea of letting a consultant advise us on process as well.
Well, Ms. Reichert, you hit it right on the head there. And November 20th, we'll have that discussion. We met with the Roles and Responsibility Task Force last week, or was it just this week? And so we've had that conversation. We'll share it with you. And I think at that time, the board will come together and make a decision. So thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a thought as you folks are getting your heads around how you want us to proceed on this, I would recommend some thought put into step B under the proposal. We'll just assume that that's not going to be the motion and it'll be structured otherwise. But I think to delegate to the chair, working with the consultant and myself, to organize that committee so we don't have to have a separate special meeting again to put the committee together, and then maybe report on that after we've gotten the consultant and can put that together.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve? A, B, no, A, C, and D.
And Madam Chair, just for those on the phone, A is in apple, C as in cat, and D as in dog.
Correct.
Okay. So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you.
Dr. Gelmstead,
Yes.
Ms. Reichert,
Yes.
Dr. Melliker,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mr. Shaft,
Shaft votes yes.
Board Chair Diedrich.
Yes. So going to
This
items.
is Chris McHugh, and I vote yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Do we want to have a motion? I guess I'm sort of thinking there ought to be a motion about how you want B to look then, before we move on into further discussions on this. Do you want to accept that, my recommendation relative to having the chair? Do we at this point appoint the chair as well? In that, in B, you were basically appointing the chair as Dr. Diederich to chair the committee, and then the recommendations that we'd put together based again on the last search. And I get it that we're going to look at that differently, but it just seems to me that there ought to be a motion to appoint Dr. Diederich as the chair, and then follow that with instructions as to how we're going to structure get the consultant on, and then work with the consultant, myself, and the chair to appoint the committee. I think we need a motion to do that. Would you agree?
Yeah, if there could be a chair.
Madam Chair, this
Oh,
is Grant.
Okay. Murray has some suggested
Okay, hold on a
language
second,
here.
Grant. Yep.
Okay.
It may be appropriate to, for the board to appoint a committee chair, and then the committee members, then the committee chair after consulting the chancellor and the consultant, could appoint the rest of the committee members. And if that's the way you want to proceed, then you could have that kind of a motion.
Okay. Grant?
Madam Chair, two parts to that. I certainly don't have any objection to appointing you as the chair of the committee, and I think from today moving forward, it's not a bad idea to have that position solidified. However, I do agree with Carrie's comments that, this is a very pivotal time for the board, and I, at least as a board member, would like the benefit of hearing from what a consultant says regarding the committee makeup, letting the board at least have an opportunity to comment on that, and then based on the board's comments on that, have the chair and the chancellor put the committee together. I'd at least like that board step in between.
Okay, thank you. So looking at the proposed timeline, and granted it's just a draft, we'll be having the conversation on the 20th as to the roles and responsibilities, task force results. So we would need to have a special meeting after that, and after the consultants, because let's see, we hire the consultant on the 24th to the 26th. Just thinking, how can we work that, Dr.
Yeah,
Stoll?
Madam Chair, I hear what Mr. Schaff is saying, but time is not on our side. We've already actually lost 1 month because and for good reasons, the board decided to wait till after the vote on Tuesday before we proceeded with this search. And so we're really a month, right now, it would be, the soonest you're going to appoint the next chancellor is May 14th in next spring. And I'm just concerned about the fact that we would have to come up with other meetings after we've selected a consultant and do all that sort of stuff. Time just isn't on our side. I understand Mr. Schaff's comments and Ms. Reichert's comments, but I just think that we need to get the consultant on and get that committee appointed and get moving.
Get moving.
Without another step in there, but that's just me.
Okay, Ms. Riker?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, is it possible to even have a half-hour conference call at one point, just to, I mean, without having to go through all of the process of getting everyone together, that, you know, in advance, we can just see what the recommendations are and have a quick discussion on it, maybe. So it's not the full-blown meeting, or it doesn't feel as onerous.
Okay. Board members? Mr. Melker?
Another thought might be to have the board be the search committee with the advisors and the presidents and other people being involved with advising and involved with the process as the process moves forward. That would allow input from all of the board members. And secondly, it would involve input from the presidents and from the people that are involved with the new chancellor to make sure that that they aren't uncomfortable with voicing their opinions one way or another on the selection, nor would they, you know, have a vote in that as well. But yet, needing their input, which we do, to move the process forward.
Madam Chair, that would save you a step. That would save a step, and you would have a decision today. And probably the only thing the chair would determine at that point, if you just appointed the board as the search committee, is then ask the chair to appoint advisors to the committee, which would be the presidents and people in the community and so forth. That would help us with our timeline, is my point. I'm sorry to be so bureaucratic about it, but
No.
there's a timeline.
It would move the timeline forward, and then secondly, it would involve more input and involvement with the communities that our colleges and universities are in, as well as our presidents and people that would be involved with it. So I guess I would move that.
Okay. So we have a motion that the search committee would consist of the full board with consultants,
With Dr. Dietrich being the chair.
with Dr. Diedrich being the chair.
I'll second that.
Second. Any more conversation?
Madam Chair, this is Grant.
Yes, Grant?
And well, I would support that motion, and I'm actually glad that we got to that point quickly, because ultimately that's what I was hoping, that the way that the board would move forward on this is as a committee of the whole. Because I can tell you during the last search process, I really truly felt at times that I wished that the entire board was serving as the search committee, because it is so important, and as we know by experience over the last couple of years now, that how important that decision is. And I just think that we come out with a better process and ultimately a better decision if we're acting as a committee of the whole, and then to allow all those other various constituencies to serve in an advisory capacity. So I would support the motion. I think it's really the right way for us to go.
This is Chris McEwen. As a question clarification, when you say the full board, does this also include the faculty and staff advisors as well?
I believe it would, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
And I think
Would they
that
be voting members?
No, I think they're in their same capacity. Janice?
I believe that, and Murray can correct me when I'm wrong here, but we can't vote at meetings, but this would be separate, so
I think we'll have to look into that.
I think it would depend on how you structure it as a committee of the whole, of the board meeting, or whether you are adding members and having those members be voting members of the advisory committee.
Hello?
Depends on how you want to structure it.
Okay.
I mean, if you establish a an advisory committee that is 20 members, and it includes the 8 members of the voting members of the board, then in concept, all of those 20 members would be voting members. But if you constitute it as the board with non-voting advisors, that changes the structure of it. So it depends on how you want to focus it. And Mr. Shaft said committee of the whole. I think maybe he had some, I don't know whether he was thinking one way or the other, but.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Oh,
this
hold
is
on a
Eric.
second,
Can you hear
Eric.
me?
Eric, please wait a second. Janice?
I think it's important that we get the voice of the presidents in this too, and so if we say, well, the board's the committee and only the board votes on this, I think we're doing a disservice to our institutions. And it sounds self-serving to say that I should have a voice or Eric should have a voice, but I think the presidents should also have a voice on it. And that working group comes together with options to the board, and then we make the decision where the 8 voting members vote at that time. But I think we have to include more opinions on an equal basis for the initial processes.
Thank you, Ms. Hopperth. One of the conversations that I had with the consultant was that you still have the voice of your constituents out there. You have listening sessions. So before we even put together the characteristics of the next chancellor, we'll be visiting with the presidents, we'll go out to the institutions, we'll talk to the business leaders, and maybe even some of the legislators that are out there, and we'll work with them so that we have buy-in from everybody before we put this together. Now, so we do want the voice of the presidents, absolutely, but I think, as Grant mentioned in his email, we don't want a situation where a president votes against somebody and then needs to work with that person in the future, and how touchy that can be. So we definitely want their input.
Madam Chairman, also the fact that a president could abstain from voting, then what good does that do us?
Yeah, correct.
So, but I think we were traveling down the path of getting input from the search consultant, but also everything you read from the AGB, they recommend a smaller, a 4 to 6 person search committee, and they recommend that anybody reporting to the chancellor not be a voting member of the search committee.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct.
This is Chris McEwen. I like the format being suggested with the 8 voting members and the 2 faculty advisors, and kind of keeping it at that and just going about the listening sessions. One comment I'll make is that you might want to also have a listening session possibly with North Dakota Student Association and other student constituency groups that collective as well.
Yep. Thank you, Chris. I agree.
If I can summarize this, Madam Chair, it seems to me that the cleanest way to do this is you've got 8 voting members of the board. They will be the voting members of the search committee, that the advisors to the board, the presidents to the board, just as we function at a board meeting, are advisors. And so basically you could develop a constituency that looks very much like B, except that with the appointment of the chair and then the state board higher ed voting members, the other 7 are on that, and then everybody below that is an advisor to the board relative to the search. Am I summarizing that sort of the way everybody's?
I think so.
Okay.
Dr. Murphy, are you on mute?
No, I'm not. But I hear half the conversation, the other half I hear, and I don't know when you guys can hear me or when you can't hear me.
Okay.
And so it's very difficult. So I have no idea if it's the tie or what it is.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah. Okay, we can hear
Hello?
you. We can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No
Because
problem.
it goes in and out. I think, I'm not sure what the best advice on this is. I think bringing the staff and representative, advisor, and the faculty advisor in on the committee in a formal manner then speaks to those constituencies within the NDUS that they're being actively represented on the in the discussions and in the process. Chris, as a voting member, certainly is involved in the process on the student side. And so I'm not sure that it doesn't necessarily mean that I feel we should have necessarily a vote. I think it's fine if the voting members of the board vote, but I think the entire board should be active in this entire process. It's just my thoughts on that conversation.
Thank you.
And I think, Madam Chair, that's what we actually have before us, correct?
It is. So the advisors would act as they do currently on the board. So they would be a part of the search, however, they just would not be voting members.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
Ms. Reichert.
I think I'm going to support this motion, and I like the idea simply because I do think it is the responsibility of the board to select that individual. That being said, who votes, who doesn't vote, boy, I really hope that we can, I really hope that this is an inclusive process and it becomes not obvious, but that we can all agree on what we're looking for, and I don't think this will be, I don't anticipate this being a people voting yes or no, or I think that we will come to an agreement. So I don't think that by saying certain people are voting or not is necessarily designed to make it less inclusive. And if we want 2 additional votes, I'm fine with that too. But I think that this should be a very inclusive process, start to finish. So.
I think the more
Thank you.
people that are involved with the process, the better. I agree, Carrie, 1,000%, because it's
Madam Chairman,
it's a
this
group
is
decision.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Morton.
I think inclusive is great, but we also have to be effective and efficient, and the smaller that number can be, the better. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And I would gladly give up if someone.
So, Mr. Morton, are you saying that even the board of 8 is too large?
No, I think the board of 8 is good.
Okay.
I just, I think we're going to get a lot of advice from a lot of good people and listen to it, and it just, I think we have to be effective in the process, and the larger that voting board gets, the more difficult it becomes.
Okay, thank you.
That's what all the that's what data shows. That's what AGB recommends.
Yes.
That's what we've all experienced.
Okay. So, Christy, would you restate the motion?
It would be to appoint the full board as the search committee, with President Diedrich as chairing the search committee, and for you to also appoint advisors.
And we already had we're in discussion now, right? Do we already have the motion and the second on that?
Yes.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, Christy?
Dr. Meliker,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Mr. Shaft,
Shaft votes yes.
Dr. Jelmstead,
Yes.
Ms. Riker,
Yes.
Mr. McEwen,
Yes.
Board Chair Diedrich.
Yes. Thank you. And so discussing of the timeline, I believe this, as Dr. Scogan said, it's rather tight. But I feel confident that we can do this, especially now that we have cut out one step in between. The only addition that we will need is to have some of these listening sessions. If we decide to do it in that format, we have to find some way to get the input from the presidents and the campuses and the communities. So how we fit that in there is going to be something that the consultant and the chancellor and myself can probably work on. But just as a heads up, if we go the route that I think we may go, it's going to take some time from the committee, the search committee, to go out and talk with these groups, actually not talk with them, listen to them, and write down the notes and bring it back to the board and to the committee.
I actually feel it's important that we solve the chancellor versus commissioner issue and don't use the two terms interchangeable.
Yep, and that we'll do on the 20th.
And settle on one term.
Yep. Mr. Scogan?
No, yeah, I was just going to say, Dr. Malacher, that the law is very clear. The North Dakota Century Code identifies that this position is the Commissioner of Higher Education. That's identified in the law. And then you have a policy that says everywhere where it says commissioner, we're going to use the term chancellor. So it is, I think that's already been articulated pretty well. Whether you wanted to reverse that decision or not would be another discussion. but so I think that's already in there, and we just make sure that we're consistent in using it.
Right, and I think consistent throughout the RFP.
Right.
Yeah.
The timeline draft is just for discussion, so we don't need to take any action on this.
Absolutely. And once we do select the consultant, Madam Chair, we will be working with the consultant on the timeline, and if making any adjustments he or she may recommend as we move forward with this. But I just we wanted to present the timeline to you. Terry Meyer is here today, I think, someplace. And she is our expert, our in-house expert on this, if you had any questions relative to the timeline. But as you can see, it's pretty quick. Right now, our best guess is that May 14th, you will make your selection of a chancellor, offer a position to someone at that time, and then it'll be a real quick turnaround. But I'm confident that we can do this. Terry Meyer has done this a number of times and is really excellent, and working with the consultants and making sure that we, this is, as some of you members have already indicated, this is a very, very important function in choosing a chancellor for the university system. It's important for the board, it's important for the institutions, it's important for the state of North Dakota. And we've got this very detailed timeline that hopefully you had a chance to review. But it's just to discuss it in case you have any questions about it, because the reality is once we select a consultant, that consultant may decide that we can move something, and I've watched in the searches I've been through, I've watched where they take out an entire step someplace because that's what you pay them for, is to advise you on those things.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Scogan. And I'd like to make...
Oh, I do have a question on, the RFP is basically to select a consultant to help us with the process. And
that is
how
correct.
many consultant companies typically?
I'll defer to Terry.
There's about 20. Okay, 25.
And then is that narrowed down to 3 to 5 or?
Terry, could you come up?
Yeah, you'll need a microphone, Terry.
Please.
There's about 25 that are sent out, and then once the proposals come in, and not all of them will submit proposals, they're evaluated based on the criteria that's laid out in the RFP.
Okay. Well, in closing, I do want to remind the board that the last time the full board sat as the search committee, we did a darn good job because we hired Dr. Scogan as our interim chancellor. So I know this can work, and I think it is probably the best way to go. In fact, I'm sure it's the best way to go as long as we get the input from the outside. All right, no, I guess we can't add anything else. So I'm going to tell myself to be quiet.
Go ahead. Yeah. Nope. Okay.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. So moved.
Okay, that sounded like a first and a second.
Second.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
And a reminder, we'll now find Claudia and we'll take a tour of the Heritage Center. We haven't had a chance to do that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.